Hey everybody, it's Zach, Tennis Pro Doc, helping you improve your game with science. And today we have a head-to-head of all three Wilson Pro Staff 97 v13s, the light, mid, and RF97. We're gonna put all these three head-to-head on the side-by-side test, serve height test, suicide test, and of course, play test. And we're gonna find out which one of these rackets is best for what type of player, because all three of them do suit a much different player's game style. So stick around, here we go.
So we'll get into the racket specs on the suicide test, but head-to-head on average ground stroke speed, I was a bit surprised that the mid actually had faster miles per hour than the RF97. Now that's only 1 mile per hour difference, 64 versus 63, but that's still impressive for a racket that's quite a bit lighter than the RF97. A big reason I think it's that mid just moves through the air on ground strokes easier, so the mass that is getting through the ball is coming through with quite a bit more speed, at least in my hands. And obviously the lighter 97, quite a bit less velocity and coming in only 58 miles per hour, owning just to that lighter frame. But remember, this test is done on fed balls with no pace. These frames all have really unique performance characteristics in the suicide and play test that help distinguish them further. The serve test is where I really saw the differences in these frames. Starting with flat serves, the 97L coming in at 86 miles per hour, the mid at 90 miles per hour, and the RF97 coming in at 94.5 miles per hour, my fastest average serve of the year. Where on ground strokes, the mid was the big winner. On serves, the RF97 was just in a league of its own in terms of speed. You just can't compete with that kind of mass coming through the ball on flat and slice serves. As you can see on slice serves, 68 miles per hour for the 97L, 73.7 miles per hour for the mid, and 79.5 on the RF. There's just a pretty big spread between the three of these. The serve height test told an interesting tale, as the mid and RF were both around 125 centimeters of kick height, which is a ton of spin, mind you, for a 97 square inch hoop, which I attribute to the 16 by 19 string bed. I think the extra few centimeters on the mid just comes from it being a little bit easier to whip and flick around my back. But the crazy thing was, the light actually got a higher kick serve height coming off the serve box. But I measure from the baseline where someone would actually hit a return of serve, and because of the lack of weight of shot, the ball just loses height once it eventually hits the baseline where the sensor actually is.
Now all three of these rackets have much different balances, swing weights, and just weight in general. But let's see how all that translates to maneuverability and weight of shot with the suicide test. All right, so the first one is the ProStaff 97 light, 10.2 ounces and 6 points head light. Let's see how it does.
The 97L is only 10.8 ounces strong, and it's 3 points head light, so it's pretty medium balance. However, with that low swing weight, this racket was almost just an extension of my arm. It could really swing it easy from any part of the court.
So this racket actually has a surprising amount of drive moving backwards on the backhand side. I did notice volleying, it can kind of get a little bit away from you if you don't have a really stiff wrist, but all in all, actually pretty surprised, number one, in how much power I can get off my back foot. I am not surprised, however, at how maneuverable it is moving forward. All right, let's go to the second one. All right, so second is the ProStaff 97. All right, we've got 11.1 ounces and 10 points head light. Let's see how it does.
Now, of course, the 97 mid moves up to 11.7 ounces strung, but you pull back to 7 points head light strung and a higher swing weight of 321. You see a lot of that mass starts moving into the handle of the racket. So even though it's heavier, you can still whip it around incredibly easy.
All right, so as you can see, especially on the last backhand, I'm not having to do nearly as much work to get the same amount of pace. Also, when volleying, this just feels a lot more solid than the light does. So let's see how the ProStaff RF does in comparison. Because I'll tell you what, this is probably one of the most maneuverable rackets I've played with this year. All right, now for the granddaddy of them all, the RF97 Autograph. This is the heaviest and most demanding racket of all three of them. So let's see how it does.
Now the RF97 moves to 12.6 ounces strung, but you're pulling back to 9 points head light strung. However, that swing weight goes up to 333. So at a certain point, this racket actually does become a little bit harder to swing. However, the stiffness rating of 68, kind of like the light, just means that this racket can absorb just a ton of pace.
Now, although this racket is a little bit harder to swing, it's a little bit harder to wield, you just have a ton of power, all right, and a ton of stability behind you. So obviously up at net, volleys are super easy and crisp, and moving backwards on the backhand, this racket is just not gonna fold when moving off the back foot. It's still gonna give you a little something behind your shot. So Ultimately a little harder to swing, but a lot of rewards are coming with it.
This playtest was a lot of fun. Now, starting with the light 97L, I thought with the lower swing weight, I'd have trouble handling some balls, but that higher stiffness rating on it did come in handy, allowing me to hold my own from the baseline.
So even though this racket is a lot lighter and less stable than some of the other three, it actually still does handle pace and depth pretty well. If you're noticing, as long as I'm getting my forearm through the ball, it's coming over with some pretty decent pace.
But of course, for every plus, there's a minus, which you'll see in these next 2 points.
You know, right there is prime example. I hit a pretty decent approach, but Mike hit a really good pass with a lot of pace. Just was not able to control it. I thought I was still using my old RF97, loosened up my wrist to get a little bit of backspin on it, and then on this frame it just popped. Same thing, trying to overcook the forehand. It was low and I was late. Sails.
Moving into the 97 mid, right off the bat, you can hear the difference in my shots. Just a more solid feel all around the court, especially at net.
So now with the 97, I'm noticing I'm still getting just a little more stick on all these shots. Still swinging the same, but the ball is just pushing my opponent back just a little bit more on these shots, and I'm able to handle his pace just a little bit more. If you saw, just reaching out for that ball, I was still able to get it back low, and he had to do something really good with it, and I was able to bend it around him. As you can see there, this racket is just able to push opponents back just a little more than the light. You're just getting a little bit more heaviness on the ball. I'm not noticing as much miles per hour. Maybe that'll change during the side-by-side test, but I'm just noticing a heavier ball pushing people back with the regular 97.
And last, the RF97. This stick is just a different animal. There's just no match for this kind of mass and head lightness when you want to push an opponent around.
Right off the bat, if you notice, my slice had a lot more carve on it and depth. Typically, Mike is able to hit those wide forehands on me and hit winners past me every time. However, on a heavier, more stout frame, the carving action of the slice just was a little bit too much for him on that. And now you're seeing just the subtle differences between that 97 and the RF97.
But there is always a trade-off. And in this case, the same as the serve test, the trade-off is a tired arm.
I will say, after playing with the 97 and the light, however, this racket is quite a bit harder to swing through the ball, so I am noticing a little bit of lack of control just because I'm not used to getting that heavy of a frame across my shoulder.
So I just want to hit the similarities of these frames real quick. They all have a lot of fortitude. They're all really hard to push around from the baseline. They all have great spin potential, and they all maneuver well. They all feel solid at impact, except the light up at net. They're all just ideal all-court players' rackets, especially that mid-97, which I think you could put in any player's hands and they'd be comfortable with it in about 10 minutes. The learning curve on that racket is just incredibly low.
What I noticed during the playtest is all three of these rackets have much different weight of shot. So the lighter racket, I can really get through the ball a lot quicker on the light. Now on the mid, it's kind of that tweener where, you know, I do feel like I'm getting a lot more precision, but I was able to get a lot of mass through the ball. And on the RF97, quite a bit heavier of a racket. It was a little bit harder to get through the ball. However, you were rewarded by a really crisp, nice feeling in your hand and a lot more of that precision, especially on slice backhands. Now I can swing a lot quicker through the ball on the light. My arm just moves through the ball really fast. But the ball is just sitting up a little more. It's coming over with speed, but not a lot of weight. Whereas in the mid and the RF97, when I'm cracking the ball, I'm really pushing my opponents back a lot farther. And I can just feel the ball just moving through the court a lot better. So that ball is just coming over so much heavier in the mid and RF97. Now up at net, there were a few surprises, but not many. On the light, it was really hard to control a heavier hit ball. I was really having to squeeze my hand a lot tighter on the light than I was on the other two, which meant that I wasn't gonna get as much precision. I wasn't able to hit those drop volleys I like to hit. Now, on the RF versus the mid, I actually like the mid up at net a little bit more than the RF. I just found that it had a little bit more forgiveness up there. Now on the RF, when I was hitting it in the middle of the string bed, it just felt super crisp and like I could pretty much do whatever I wanted with it. However, it's just a lot easier to hit the middle of the string bed in the mid. So therefore up at net, I actually like the mid a lot more than the RF. So what's interesting on the light was during the play test, as long as the ball was not coming over super heavy, I was able to get the racket out in front of me. I was actually able to get really good control and pace off of it, even on slice backhands, which was kind of surprising to me because a lot of light rackets, I find that the slices start popping up or you just don't get any pace on them. So playing with the mid, I found that the one word I could describe it as is comfortable. I was able to hit most of my shots anywhere on the court with a lot of comfort knowing it was gonna go in, so it had a lot of control. But also, it was comfortable on my arm. It didn't give me some of that arm strain that the RF97 did, even though both of them have a lot of pinpoint accuracy. Now on the RF97, yeah, when I was hitting it in my ideal strike zone and I was really feeling a grooved shot, there's really nothing like a nice, heavy, and headlight racket like the RF97 Autograph to really make you feel like you are in control of a point. However, as a match wears on, or maybe you're getting a little bit deeper in a tie break and your arm starts getting a little tighter, I was kind of wishing I had the mid in my hand at that point because the RF was just getting a little bit too much for my arm. Now, maybe that's because I'm just getting a little older and I'm not, in my early 20s anymore, but I will say that, nerves and arm tightness happen to everybody. So if you're really feeling loose, the RF97, yeah, it's going to give you a beautiful, crisp, clean ball. However, for every other time you're on the court, I just really felt that the mid was just a lot more comfortable when I was really getting into those deeper parts of the match or deeper parts of the tiebreak. And I felt that it wasn't a big difference between weight of shot and speed of shot between the RF97 and the 97 mid. So for my taste, I think from the baseline and the net, the mid is just the big winner of all three of these. And along that same vein, during the serve test, I used the RF97 first. And I did notice hitting more flat serves, I did start to get a little bit of shoulder pain. However, as soon as I went down to the mid, that pain just almost evaporated immediately. So which player do each one of these rackets suit the best? So let's start with the light. Now I think if you're playing from the baseline mostly, and you're not hitting with people that hit with a ton of pace and weight of shot, this racket is actually gonna be really darn good. You can get it through the air really fast, got a 16x19 string pattern, and you do have that kind of pocketing and forgiveness of the 97 line. Now, on the mid, I think this is just your generic player's racket, and I say generic, that's not a bad word. It means it's probably gonna fit just about any intermediate to advanced level player and give you pretty good accuracy, power, and control. So I would say if you're gonna find the ideal player's racket just for an intermediate to advanced player, this is it. It's pretty much gonna fit any player, especially up at net. Now, the RF97, who is this best for? This is best for somebody that, number one, maybe plays a lot of 4-5-5-0 doubles. This is just going to give you such control up at net. Next, someone that plays with people that are hitting with a lot of pace on the baseline. And if you're playing someone that hits a heavier ball, this racket is just not gonna fold. It's gonna be able to absorb that pace and redirect it really well. And if you're hitting the middle of the string bed every time, and if you have a really nice shoulder turn and follow through, this racket is gonna give you a little more of that pinpoint accuracy than the mid and definitely the light. Now, typically during these play tests, I'll tell you what I would do to customize these rackets if I were gonna buy them. However, you have three options here. The only one that I would really customize would be the light, and that would be to add some mass in the throat, maybe the handle. However, if I'm gonna do that, I'd just go with the mid or the RF97. Now, these rackets are very popular right now, and a lot of people are play testing them. So if you've had any experience with them whatsoever, make sure you leave me a comment down below and let me know which one you like the best and which one you think is worth your money or your play test. And so where do these rackets fall in the search for my new racket? Well, considering I already play with an RF97, I will say that the mid really did impress me today, and I think that if I were going to switch to any of these three, it would be that mid. However, we do have a ton of rackets to test out. We've got Yonex E-Zone coming up soon, as well as the Head Extreme and Gravity series, so make sure you stay tuned for those. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day, great night, wherever in the world you are tuning in from. I'll see you next time.